Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We have Austin with us again, and today we're gonna talk about some general safety tips when it comes to camping and hiking. This is probably the most common question that I get asked in relation to whether it's solo traveling or safety from other people. And so we're gonna try to address these things today, go over some general things that everyone should be thinking about, whether you're alone or not. And these are all also great things that you can apply to your everyday life, even when you're at home or driving to work or whatever it is. So Austin, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate you having me back again. As far as thinking about safety when we're alone in the backcountry, from my experiences in the military and from my experiences in search and rescue here, I've seen a lot of examples of what not to do, and I learned a lot of ways to do it properly while I was in the military and have been trained in search and rescue and those types of things. Well, a big thing that people fail to do is to plan appropriately prior to even leaving, especially whenever you're going alone. I would always suggest take a friend or travel in a pack if you can, right? But obviously the reality of it is I want to go, my friends don't want to go, but I'm going to go. So, and that's totally fine. And you can do it absolutely responsibly and safely. Just set up a good plan prior to leaving, because that's something that many people fail to do appropriately. They kind of go out on a whim and they're like, oh, I've got most of the things I need, and they take off. Unfortunately, that doesn't usually pan out very well when there is an emergency, or even some type of something just goes slightly wrong. It can kind of compound upon itself. So prior planning is key, and it's really the most important thing that I would foot stomp. Make a plan, and that should consist of the 4 W's, the who, what, when, and where, and send that information off to 3 or 4 responsible friends, not that one friend that's not ever paying attention or doesn't check their phone. 3 or 4 responsible friends, and let them know those 4 W's. So the who is going, if it's just me or I'm going with another friend, you should send that off. The what activity am I taking off to do? I mean, just in this area that we're in, we've got the river right here, we've got hiking trails, there's some driving trails. So if someone came to this area just because I told them where I am, they might not know exactly what I'm doing. So letting them know, hey, I'm here at this trailhead, I'll be hiking for this amount of time, and that's the when. When do I plan on leaving? Like a time frame, when I plan to show up to the trailhead or to the river or whatever activity I'm doing, when I plan to be back. And even in that times and kind of types into your comms window, and we'll get into that in a little bit as well. But then the where, be very specific. So I'm parking in the south lot, or I'm parking at this trailhead. I'm starting on this trailhead, heading in this direction. I'll be camping down at this campsite. Being as specific as you can, and even sending them coordinates prior to going out is key. So sending that information, the 4 W's, to 3 or 4 responsible people, as well as prior planning your comms and security. Camp security in the military, security is really your number one concern. You never do anything to jeopardize or compromise security. So when we think about camp security, I don't mean rolling out in your Humvee or in your tank or whatever it is. You can be really secure and make a few steps to secure yourself and give you that sense of security while you're out there. So one thing is, like, how do I park and set up my camp? Just like in the campsite that we're in here, the road being next to us, I know there's one avenue of approach. There's one way that I can get in and get out. So that's my avenue of approach as well as my egress point. When I think about those things, I want to position myself to where maybe I'm not up here where I can't see that, but maybe I don't even want to be in a position where they can easily see me and see my campsite right from the road. Unfortunately, a lot of the crime that does happen in campsites where people are preying on someone that's solo or preying on a campsite is because it's right in the open, and it's crime of opportunity. They, someone that has poor intentions sees something, they see an opportunity, and they take that opportunity. So just bedding down a little bit off the road where you're not as easily visible is a huge part of that security. Also positioning my vehicles, positioning my equipment so I'm ready to roll fairly quickly. And also I want to have some way of protecting myself, whether that's from 4-legged creatures or 2-legged creatures. So I'm a huge advocate of always carrying a gun, carrying some type of a firearm, and being trained and proficient in how to use that. So that is a part of your security protocol. And then also comms. Comms is a huge one that a lot of people, I would say that that comms, especially within prior planning, is one of the most underutilized and under attended to things that you can do to set yourself up for success, because you don't want to plan for everything. You want to plan for everything to go great, but you also want to have that plan, the contingency for when things do go awry and go wrong. So communications, whether that's your cell phone, do I have service in the area that I'm going to? Most of the time I don't. So I have either a sat phone, which you can pick up on the internet for a few $100, not very expensive, and you can get communications almost anywhere in the world, as well as an inReach. A Garmin inReach is another great option. I can set emergency communications. I know in search and rescue, inReach does a really good job of getting that call out and getting it to us. So typically from an inReach activation to the time that we're getting a phone call and deploying on that call is usually like 7 to 10 minutes. Yeah. So it's happening really quickly, and it's really, really accurate. So when I get a lat long of your location, I know where you are about within 10 feet of where that signal was sent out from. So great option for emergency communications. I want to have, there's an old adage, 2 is 1, 1 is none. If I go into the backcountry with one item, one thing, one piece of life-saving equipment, then I'm accepting not having that at all. So I'm always going to carry one and then carry a redundancy and a backup to that. So that way I always have that covered.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Like, I have my Sawyer water filter, and that's like my primary water filter, but I always have purification tablets in my med kit as well. So like enough to get me out.
Exactly.
You know, if the thing
yeah.
fails.
So if I carry, you know, and that ties into another concept that is called layering your equipment. So I'm not going to put all of my life-saving equipment, communications, medical devices, firearms, any of that type of stuff. I'm not just going to stuff it all in my backpack, because if I was to fall or be in the river and I lose that one thing, then it's all gone. So I'm going to strategically place my redundancies in different places. So I might carry something in my pocket, carry something else in my backpack, carry something else in a fanny pack or whatever it is. So layering that equipment is key to maintaining that life-saving equipment as well. So part of your prior planning portion of going out is something like I like to call mental modeling. And it's a term that I learned when I was in the military. And I'm sure plenty of people have heard it in different capacities of whatever business that they're doing and job that they have. But what it is thinking about emergencies or situations that could potentially happen to me, thinking about probability, not possibility, because anything's really possible, but what's probable to happen to me or to the people I'm with or my situation, based on the time of year, the activity that I'm doing, a whole slew of different things. But looking at those and saying, okay, what's a probability that's going to happen? The highest probability is that I would potentially get injured. Maybe I roll my ankle. That's probably the highest probable thing to happen to me while I'm out on a hike. So I'm going to have gear that supports me getting through those probabilities. Now, I don't want to say it's probably going to happen to you, but I want to say that that is the highest on the probability list of things that could become an emergency that could take you into a survival situation. So thinking through all the probabilities. So medical, I want to absolutely make that a part of it. If someone gets hurt, what are my literal actions going to be? Not just a quick conversation. Hey, yeah, Amanda, if you get hurt, I'm just going to run down the hill, call 911, and we'll come up and get you. I want to actually walk through that plan and have literal actions upon X, whatever it could be. So mentally modeling what that looks like prior to going out. And then when I'm out there, when I get to my campsite, actually looking at the environment I'm in and saying, okay, these are the things I'm going to do upon that action. So mental modeling through each step by step by step, how I want that scenario to go. Not getting married to the exact idea of how it has to happen, but having the principles in mind so that way I can apply those principles and adapt in a situation that may happen. The other part of that is while I'm actually at the location, I'm doing what I'm doing, having some level of situational awareness. It's super key. So that ties in with security, that ties in with really a lot of different things. Just picking my campsite. I'm not going to pick a campsite that's in a dry riverbed, right? I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but having the situational awareness to pay attention to those things is key to your safety. It's key to you enjoying yourself as well, right? If I pay attention to where I'm setting up camp, to how I pack the things in my bag, how I dress appropriately for the weather, that level of situational awareness is just key to being successful in any endeavor that you do, but especially when it comes to being off the grid by yourself. You got to pay attention. Yeah, I actually was camping by myself a few years ago, and I was on a spot that was pretty close to a road up in the mountains, and I was actually like living in my car at that time to save some money and to travel more. That's awesome. And so I was sitting there, and
all of a sudden I see this guy coming by on the road. He looked very disheveled and he was riding a bike that was like way too small for him. So something about the situation was a little off. Like I just kind of got that intuitive feeling because it's not an area that people ride bikes. It was just kind of weird. So I kind of watched him and he looked at me and we made eye contact and he gave me a very like creepy, sly little smile. And so I moved. Like I was just like, you know what? I kind of have that weird feeling. Might as well just move. And I drove down to a different area to camp. So just kind of having that awareness of the people around you and in the environment is important.
And listening to that intuition is huge.
Yeah.
A lot of people will underplay that. They'll undermine that feeling. I'm just being paranoid or I'm just being overprotective or whatever it is. Don't ignore your intuition. Fear, adrenaline, all those things are there. That intuition is there to keep us alive. That's why you have those feelings. So if something makes you uncomfortable, sure, it could be, he could have just been the next guy on a bike ride. Or he could have absolutely looked and said, this is an opportunity for me to do something that's with poor intent, and then come back and take an advantage of that situation. And that intuition is absolutely something that you should always be keen. There's a great book called Deep Survival, and I would suggest reading it. It's all about that. It may seem like it's about that primitive survival, but it's actually about that intuition and how accidents have happened because people didn't listen to that intuition. So absolutely worth checking in and reading about. So next up, I want to talk about proper equipment. And again, all these topics that we talk about do kind of fall back into prior planning, as in laying out all my gear and knowing what I'm taking with me, but also the gear needs to be appropriate to where I'm going, the time of year, all those different types of considerations. So having the proper equipment, but not only having it with me, but knowing how to use it. There's been several times, especially particularly in the winter, I see vehicles that are way back in the backcountry, they get stuck, and then they call search and rescue. We have to go out, find them, and then get them out of that situation. But what's crazy is a lot of these folks have really nice vehicles that have a winch or max tracks or all the equipment they need to get out of the situation. They just don't know how to use it. So taking the time to learn the equipment, not just buy the coolest, most high-speed thing off the shelf, put it in your bag and say, oh, I've got it now, but actually taking the time, get some training on that equipment, whether that means going to a class and learning from a professional or someone that has a lot of experience with that equipment, or even just getting on YouTube and watching a video could do you a lot of good. So learn how to use the proper equipment and what to take, and know that you pretty much have 5 basic needs that you need to facilitate while you're in the backcountry, which is your health, it's your personal protection, it's subsistence, and then the other things are your kind of your contingencies, which are signaling, in other words, how to get help, whether that's a communications device, a signaling mirror, a signaling panel of a bright color, and then the recovery method that needs to be. And where I like to take that with, especially with civilians, is do I know when to stay, know when to go, right? If I'm in an emergency, the emergency, if I can handle it, it might not actually turn into a survival situation. I might be able to handle that emergency with the proper equipment and get myself out of a sticky situation prior to ever becoming true survival. So if I'm stuck in an area in my vehicle, a lot of people use a vehicle as it's a false sense of security. You know, I'll have my car, I'll have my ATV or whatever it is, and they drive it 15, 20 miles back there, and then it breaks down or they crash it, and now what? And having like a really basic sense of having their proper tools to take care of that vehicle, and a little bit of understanding of maintenance to be able to fix something. Do you know how to patch a tire? Do you know how to work your winch? Do you know how to do whatever it is? Do you know how to jump start your car? Things like that. Little things that are very easily overlooked pay dividends in the backcountry when you're trying to enjoy yourself off grid, because the supplies you have are much more limited. So paying attention to having the proper equipment and knowing how to use it will always facilitate a much better experience and a much safer experience. And lastly, I want to talk about always know where you are. I think every guy and gal that spends a lot of time in the backcountry likes to think of themselves as the next great Jeremiah Johnson, right? They think they're the ultimate woodsman, and I'm just as guilty of that as the next guy. But being honest with yourself and knowing, one, where your deficiencies are in the backcountry, but always knowing where you are is a huge one that people mess up a lot. And a lot of people will grab a GPS and they think, oh, I have this GPS, I'll just turn it on, it's gonna show me right where I'm at. Okay, but now what? Imagine you just turn on your GPS in the backcountry and it shows you right where you're at. Then what? A lot of people don't know what to do after that. So actually learning how to use your GPS and what it's used for, that's not how that's supposed to work, right? You're supposed to set waypoints. You should have a sense of direction. You should have the azimuth, emergency azimuth. So an emergency azimuth, and this ties into 2 is 1, 1 is none. I'm not gonna just carry a GPS. If I'm gonna carry a GPS, I'm gonna carry extra batteries for that GPS. And I'm also gonna carry a map of the area I'm in with a compass, and I'm gonna know how to use those. On all of my calls that go on search and rescue, I have the newest, most high-speed GPS I'm issued by search and rescue. I use it very often, but I also have a map and a compass. So if that GPS goes down, if my lanyard breaks and it falls off in the snow or out in the mountain somewhere and I don't have it, I can at least find where I am with a map and compass. So that's that 2 is 1, 1 is none. But an emergency azimuth is something that I can set by saying, okay, if I'm here and I leave from here and go to my campsite, which is here, I need to know the azimuth to get me back to the road, which is, the azimuth is just the compass, the direction in degrees in which I can turn the compass into that direction and know if I walk that X distance, I will hit the road. So it's for an emergency, whatever the scenario may be, I don't know where I am, I've wandered off from camp, whatever the situation, I know I can turn that azimuth and head that direction, and I'll find some sense of normalcy or find people that can help me in that situation. So knowing where you are is really, really key. Another part of that is not only knowing where I am, knowing where I'm trying to go, knowing where I came from, and then knowing where resources that I can tap into should I need them are co-located in my position. So when I go to the backcountry, whether I'm hunting, just spending time in the woods, I like to kind of just disappear off grid myself. I try to build in some resources into where I'm going. Obviously, if I'm spending a night or two, I can carry enough provisions on my back. If I'm gonna go out on a week-long hunting trip, I can't carry all the stuff I need. So I want to bed down somewhere close to water. Typically, I like to say 500 meters, especially in fairly moderate terrain. I can get 500 meters pretty quickly, get to water, and bring those resources back to my camp. So I like to have resources and know where things are in relation to me, as well as just my general sense of direction. So that's another really key component that I often see people fail at, and it's a really easy one to learn, and it's just going to promote you having a much safer experience in the backcountry and give you a lot of confidence while you're out there.
Yeah, and I think that ties into the whole prior planning thing. You can be looking at maps and satellite views and planning this stuff out at home before you even hit the trail or hit that backcountry road, and leave all this information with someone back at home. Absolutely. And I also like to get like a good high level awareness of just the landscape in general.
Absolutely.
And then when I am out hiking or driving, I'm really trying to develop that habit of noticing everything as I go. And one of the ways that you can do that is by like saying things out loud, like, oh, look at this weird little landmark we're going by on our right. And so that will help you kind of remember these things and just keep you oriented when you're actually out in the wilderness.
Absolutely. And those landmarks, that's a great point. Bring it up, talk about it, but also as you walk past that landmark, turn around and look at it from the other direction, because it might look a lot different. Whereas you remember a tree, well, that tree went up and it was really big and it was broken off and hung to the right, but then you turn around and you're coming back, it's like you're looking for the tree that was hanging to the right, which is obviously hanging to the left now. So paying attention to that remember we're in a 360-degree environment, and the weather can change. You could be injured, you could be dehydrated. There's a lot of things that can compound upon themselves and make things seem much different than what they are. So.
Yeah. All right, so those are some really great tips that we all can be thinking about, whether we're camping, backcountry hiking, driving on dirt roads in the national forest. You know, these are really good safety measures to have in place and to be thinking about before you even go on that activity. I hope this has been helpful and has answered some of your questions and concerns when it comes to safety. Make sure to comment below with some of the things that you're gonna do first. I know that writing things down and really taking action is going to be important. It's one thing to like listen to this, but it's a whole other thing to actually implement it. So let us know what you're gonna do first. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.